Welcome to the Emo Social Club podcast, broadcasting to you live or just recorded from emosocialclub.tv. I am Brian.
And I'm Lizzie, and we're here this evening with Mike Henneberger, who is an Emmy Award-winning producer, has worked with Comedy Central, Vice, and a plethora of other media, and is the author of the new book, Rock Bottom at the Renaissance. Thank you so much for being here, Mike, with us.
No,
this is crazy.
I'm stoked. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. I'm excited.
It is the first question on our list, a first question on the sheet that Lizzie wrote for us. It was a note for us, but I also want to acknowledge. I want to acknowledge the note. I want to acknowledge that it's a question, but it's also a statement. Bruh, why is this man talking to us? Because we feel very like your experience is just like crazy to us, you know, like to work on these shows, to work in this and be an Emmy-winning producer, like all that. We're like, what? Why? we're just two random little kids from the Chicago suburbs.
I mean, you know, like I feel the same way. I still feel like I'm a random like punk emo kid, you know, and I was gonna say, I mean, I'll be 39 in November, so it's like I've had a lot of time to do stuff. If you actually think about it, I'm probably underaccomplished for my age because I like didn't get my shit together till like my 30s. So I mean, I did some cool stuff when I was a kid, but then I kind of just like blew my 20s, and so but I've never felt old because I've done a lot because of the cool things that I've done. I feel like, you know, I have enough going on, or I've done enough for my age sometimes. But I think most people who are normal, healthy adults that were on like the right path to be an adult would probably say that guy is not that accomplished. So like I just kind of like hit turbo in my 30s and just started working my ass off to like do cool things and get my life together. So once I started doing that, things kind of started working out, I guess.
Yeah. Like
I said, I feel like I'm just I always call myself like just a punk kid. And even working at some of these like corporate places, I often vent to my friends that I'm just a punk kid and I can't handle corporate jobs. So yeah, man, I'm here because you're my people. Like I love just talking to people about music and just hanging out with people who like the same things I like.
For sure. I mean, we obviously feel the same as well, because it's just like we've been very lucky with this podcast to talk to very nice people from all different experiences, different age ranges, different backgrounds and all that. And I've never felt more about like the scene and music and all that, that everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is having their own experience with their life. And like, especially in music, it's a little bit of like, I want to be a kid forever. I want that Peter Pan experience. And yeah, for a lot of people, it was like, shit, there's something I have to do to like make money, you know, in my future, but I'll worry about that later. And then everybody's kind of goes on this whole journey, and it's like, you know what, that's their journey. And that's everyone's journey probably in the music industry.
Yeah, no. And I think that's kind of like what the music is that, you know, I mean, for me and hopefully for a lot of people, it's not necessarily like I want to be a kid forever, but it's like an anchor, you know. It can always like, it's kind of like something we can always come back to like feel safe when, as we're going on through this journey and trying to progress and trying to grow up. You know, that's scary sometimes, and it's miserable sometimes. So that's like our anchor, you know. It takes us back to a time where, you know, and we romanticize it, which is like what this book is about too, like romanticizing these things. Because like we loved this stuff when we were kids because we were depressed and because we were like sad and like made breakups bigger than they really were and stuff like that. So it's like, not that being a kid was like the happiest times of our lives. So maybe we don't really want to go back there. We just romanticize it because like, I don't know, maybe adult life just sucks too. And we just want to pretend that there was a time when things didn't suck. I don't know.
Yeah. The nostalgia aspect of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in the novel, so I listened to the audiobook version of it, which I think is like I'm not a big audiobooks person. I've like never listened to audiobooks up until this past year. And I think without having that, because it is like that memoir mixtape, that it loses aspects and essence of it. But I am wondering what propelled you to kind of add that element into it and have it as an audio book versus having it as like Spotify has like radio shows where they kind of have that also integrated in, but it's obviously a different platform and medium. What was the thought process of like getting that put together?
I mean, when I started this book, Spotify didn't even exist. So, so I mean, but even besides that, like, cause I started writing this in 2011. So maybe it existed in some form, but we weren't using it then. But honestly, it wasn't a like premeditated thing. It's like for people who have read the book or will read the book, the first chapter starts off with me like leaving work to go to this hotel where I'm going to spend the weekend to try to write this book. And I'm listening to my, the music on my phone, and Jimmy Eat World's 23 comes on. And so throughout the first chapter, 23's lyrics pop up. And then that just happened to be like what happened at that moment. And so when I was writing it, I was thinking of the song, and the song, I mean, I like literally the first scene in the book of me leaving work to get to the hotel, then I get to the hotel and I wrote down what just happened. And so that's how the music came into that. And then every chapter after that has a song that goes with it. And a lot of those songs, there's like 3 Bayside songs in there, 3 Dangerous Summer songs in there, 2 Jimmy Eat World songs in there. And those are just the bands that I listened to when I, was depressed and when I was sad, like I was in this book. And so they were playing as I was writing this book. And so that's the case for most of those chapters. I accidentally stumbled upon the formula. I mean, I had written things before as a music journalist. Like I wrote a Warped Tour review where it was kind of just like kind of the same format as the book. It was like my experience of being at this particular Warped Tour with this girl that I was dating at the time. And as I would review the bands in this like piece I was writing, I would like pop up their lyrics in the concert review. So I had done it before. So I guess it's kind of like a natural thing that I would do. Because I like to, like my writing experience started as a music journalist. And when I would review concerts and stuff, I would want people to feel like they were there, And so to me, sometimes that meant stopping what I was saying in the story to just play the music or like write the lyrics so that people felt like they were listening to the band too, like standing there at that moment. And so that was just kind of like a thing I used to do when I wrote. And so that's how it happened with the book. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm going to do this way. And yeah, once I started, I knew it had to be an audiobook at some point. Like I always had this idea that like, oh, it'd be cool when I make the audiobook to put the music in it. And that was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But fortunately, like all the bands and labels and stuff let me do it. So the music gets to pop up in there. And now when I listen to the audiobook, I'm like, this is the way it's meant to be experienced. It's such a different experience than just reading the book. So I love the audiobook. It's great. It's hard for me to talk about how good it is because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm just like the producer of it with the idea. Like Tyler Posey reads it and does an amazing job. And then all these bands made this music. I didn't make that music. Like it's good because their music's in it and Tyler Posey did a great job.
I realize we haven't actually said like what the book is and like kind of given like a little like synopsis of it. Could we just say like it's called Rock Bottom at the Renaissance. It's your memoir. Can you talk a little bit about what the book is and all that?
Yeah. So the full title is Rock Bottom at the Renaissance, an emo kid's journey through falling in and out of love in and with New York City. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who can say it all the way through without fumbling over it. And I totally understand that. But yeah, it's a memoir I wrote. that covers like the first few years that I moved to New York, and that I've lived in New York, which I still do. I've been here for 9 years now. And it kind of, there's a lot of flashbacks in it that kind of show how I grew up in South Texas in a small little town, kind of always wanting to get out, always feeling like I needed, like I didn't belong. And kind of because of movies and pop culture, thinking like, oh, I got to get to New York or I got to get to LA, and watching all these movies and reading books and listening to music that romanticized New York. It was just this like awesome place that I needed to get to. And then when I got here, it was hard because I was alone and I had one friend who wasn't a very good friend. And so I was pretty much alone. And I thought like, okay, I moved here to work at Comedy Central, and I was like, great, this is like dream job or on the way to a dream job. Living in Dream City, like everything was complete except I didn't have like a partner. I didn't have a girlfriend or something. So I thought that was the missing piece. Like I was so depressed and I was so broken, and knowing that I had already been diagnosed with major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder, knowing that I had mental illness, but still not wanting to accept that. And so I just kept thinking like, oh, I just feel this way because I don't have someone to love me right now. And so it's this memoir about, me feeling alone and picking the wrong ways to not feel alone. And it's about me struggling with depression and anxiety and picking the wrong ways to treat that depression and anxiety, abusing pills and abusing alcohol. And it's about the music that helped me survive that by some miracle. Because it's about how that depression and anxiety almost killed me multiple times. And somehow I'm still here. So yeah, it's a dark journey, but I think it's a interesting, at least, maybe not fun. Sometimes it's fun. I think it's a fun book to read.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes you're having a good time, not super on the internet. And then other times you're like, oh no, I am having a terrible fucking time right now.
Yeah.
It's also a very I think universal story. Hearing you like leave a town, which is like the pop punk thing to do, right? And then end up somewhere else and hoping that like something else will help you feel better about your situation, and then finding out like, nope, now I'm just depressed over here instead of depressed over there.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's the whole wherever you go, there you are thing. And I mean, now, probably 6 years later after I finished it and then kept kind of tweaking it here and there a little bit. But now I feel much better. I feel so much more mentally healthy. And it's because I started doing the right things to treat my depression and my anxiety. I found the right medications to take. I have a therapist that I speak to. I meditate and I exercise and I try to sleep better. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's better than not knowing if you're going to if you're going to die in your sleep because you took a bunch of Ambien and washed it down with scotch. And yeah, so I don't know. I feel a lot better these days. And I mean, that's kind of why it's out. That's exactly why it's out. Because, it took me getting better to be okay with people knowing who I was back then,
It feels like it's basically like a coming of age novel, but like, because it gives me like Perks of Being a Wallflower vibes. But then I also, I know AJ from The Dangerous Summer did kind of reference it as being like High Fidelity meets Choke by Chuck Palahniuk and Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which I'm a huge Chuck Palahniuk fan, and I read Catcher in the Rye every single year to see if I hate Holden Caulfield even more, or if I vibe with him even more.
Checking in with Holden.
How are you feeling about that? Because I'll let you answer that first.
I feel like now at 26, I originally read it when I was a junior in high school, and I was ahead of grade, so I think I was like 15 at that point, and I definitely am now like, I understand that there's a lot more trauma because I've also been seeing a lot more takes on Holden and like why he acts as he does that I would never have considered in the last like 10, 11 years. And that's why he's acting the way he
but
is.
when you say yeah, but that's like those are people's interpretations though. That's not like
Right.
necessarily what. So, yeah, because like I hated it when I read it. I also resented that schools were still teaching it like in the 90s and in the early 2000s. Like I had to read it in college too, and like that was in 2000s, and I was like, I still hate that. I still hate that like teachers are too lazy to like find newer versions that are worth new things that are worth teaching, and it happens in college film classes too. It's like, why are we still teaching like movies from the 70s? Like I get it, but I mean there's so much, like you can't go out and try to make films based on what was great in the 70s because everybody else after that already did that. So like you shouldn't be learning. I don't think people should be learning from that. Anyway, I always hated Catcher in the Rye. I always thought that like it was like controversial for its time and that's why it was so huge. But then like you're reading it in the 90s and you're like, so like what, like whatever. But maybe I need to read it as an adult. I'm curious since you said that, like if I'd have a different take on it.
Yeah, it's definitely after I read that quote, I was like, okay, I guess I could kind of see it. And then I also got a lot of like the sarcastic attitude as well that like kind of Chuck Palahniuk has in a lot of his stories as well. And like just the way that you tell the story, like written words, obviously Tyler Posey does the narration and everything, but it's like there's a motif. And I think the biggest motif that I picked out of it was your cigarettes and how you were like, this is how I get cheap cigarettes. This is how, but I'm not really a smoker. And like that kind of put it all together for me. Like, Holden Caulfield was like, I don't swear.
I can see that.
I'm better. I'm better than everybody else.
All right. No, you're the first person who's like made me think like, okay, I finally see that comparison. Cause like, I'm not a huge reader. I've become a bigger reader in the last couple of years, but like I had never read any Chuck Palahniuk until AJ said that. And I listened to the audiobook of Choke. And I've seen Fight Club, but I know that that's not like exactly like the book. Yeah, like I don't care. I'm honored to be compared to. I've read some Nick Hornby. I like Nick Hornby a lot. I'm honored to be compared to, him and some people compare me to Chuck Klosterman. I've read this book to Chuck Klosterman. I've read some of him too. But yeah, like I like that comparison to Holden Caulfield now, and I've always kind of resented the like being lumped in with that book, but that's a great. You're right, like that makes perfect sense to me. See, I love doing podcasts because I get to talk all this stuff out, and I always learn something new about the book. And normally, because I wrote it drunk and high, so like none of it was like premeditated. None of it was like thought out. And so I'm still to this day, like realizing things about it because now I'm, not literally sober, but now I have a more sober mind to like view it from, It's fun.
Yeah. It's like a character, but it's not.
Oh, totally.
There's no separation, but it's also a separation, I guess.
No, yeah, and that's what I call it. I call it the character now because it's so far from who I am today. Yeah, and then especially like I haven't read the book in a while because I've been like working on the audiobook for so long, and just hearing Tyler read it makes me even more. It makes it easier to separate myself from it because now it feels like Tyler's story because that's why he did it. I mean, he did it because he related to the story. And he volunteered his time to do it because he connected with it. And so now I listen to him reading it and it's like hearing his story. So that's nice too.
I was going to ask, but now we know that he volunteered his time for it.
He was just ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you guys seen any of the videos I did with him, but I have some videos on my, actually I don't, well, they're on my YouTube channel, because I started this video series called Rock Bottom Book Club, where I interviewed AJ from The Dangerous Summer, and we talk about the book, and then I interviewed Tyler and we talk about the book, and he said that like when he read it, he didn't know I wanted him to do the audiobook, but he was like, and his quote is like, I didn't know if you wanted to do an audiobook, a TV show, or what, but whatever you wanted to do, I'm in. And so like now I got to write a TV show of it, so Tyler will do it. But I'm still 10 years later just as scared to write that TV show as I am in the book of writing the book. I don't know. So some things have not changed at all.
I also kind of had to look up who Tyler Posey was because it made me feel old.
Oh, for sure.
I'm like, wait, who is this person? And then I was watching something earlier and they mentioned like, so OnlyFans is starting a secondary app that is going to be OnlyFans OFTV, and it's no adult content, no adult content at all. It is completely going to be accessible on Apple TV, on iOS, on Roku, on Fire TV. So like it's going to be an app. Everybody is going to have access to it. And then they're interviewing a lot of people who have made content for OnlyFans. But then I heard Tyler Posey's name in there and I'm like, is Tyler Posey on OnlyFans? Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah, he is. Oh, yeah, he is.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
as I say about everybody, like make your money. I've talked with Lizzie many times about like, look, I just want to use OnlyFans as Patreon because I just don't want to go to Patreon, and I think you get more attention at this point just using the name OnlyFans. But now this OFTV is basically going to be Patreon, but like they're kind of pushing it more towards people like us, like podcasters or other types of creators, where you can do more like TV stuff. So. It might premiere on OFTV.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe that's where we premiere our show.
Yeah.
But it's funny because like when like companies start launching that stuff, they start just throwing lots of money at anything. So I'll sell out to OnlyFans.
I mean, they have the money to throw at it right
100%.
now.
And they already know how popular Tyler is. But no, so like in that interview I have with Tyler, I tell him that like I Googled hot young Latino actors, and that's how I found him. You do. And it's true. Because in the book, it's not a huge part of the book, but I mentioned how I'm half Mexican. And so like, I want to cast, like I've always wanted to write TV shows and movies, and I've written a bunch of scripts and stuff. And so like this isn't a new thing that happened just because of Tyler in the book. It's always been a goal of mine. So like I've always had the idea of turning this into a TV show. And I wanted the person who recorded the audiobook to be somebody who'd be, in for the whole ride and would want to play the role on the TV show. And so I wanted them to be Latino, because I didn't know how much more that could be, how much more of a part that would play in a TV show. And so when I Googled that, I saw Tyler on there, and he was the only person I knew or recognized, but also like, he's definitely of a younger generation. He's actually the same age I was when I wrote the book, or at least when we started doing this. And I recognized him because he was on an episode of Workaholics when I was handled like the social media stuff for that show when I worked at Comedy Central. And so I remembered his episode, and I remembered like him being in it. And I was like, I looked him up, and then I found out that he like DJ'd emo night in LA, and he played in a pop punk band. And then I found this video on YouTube where he's just talking about like his mental health issues. And I was like, holy shit, this is like perfect.
Yeah.
And then it just so happened that my publicist for the book, Big Picture Media, or the PR company, Big Picture Media, I've been friends with the owner of that company for over a decade, and she was his band's publicist, and they're also his current publicist for his music. So she put me in contact with him and let me send him, or he gave her his address so I could send him the book, and I sent him the book, and then that's when he like just really loved it, and now we're here.
Yeah, that's really like all the pieces fell into place on that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as like putting the audiobook together in the first place with the music. Like, you just have to ask and not give up if someone says no. I mean, I got a no from one band in the book that's like a chapter band, because there's like songs throughout the book, but I needed the main chapter songs, and one of the band's management said no, and then I was just real, not like asshole persistent about it, but I was like finally going to put it out, and I was like, hey, this manager was on a podcast talking about how like he wants his management company and his artists to be activists and be involved in causes and stuff. And so I sent one last email and I said, hey, I heard you on this podcast talking about how you think it's important for bands to be activists and support causes. So I just wanted to reach out one last time before I put this book out to make sure that you didn't want this band to be the only band not participating in this.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah.
And that worked. So they were nice enough to go to like, and I get it, you know, they probably get requests like this all the time, and it's a big deal. And I always explain to the bands that like, I understand, believe me, like I know the value of your songs. I know that it's worth something. I just don't have any money, and I'm donating half. I think the only reason any of these bands let me use their music is because I'm donating half of the royalties to mental health charities. Some of the bands I've known and I've worked with before, but the ones that I didn't, the bigger bands, I think it was just like they saw that, you know, I'm trying to help people out who are going through this shit, and I'm giving money to charity from these book sales. So I think that played a big part in it too.
And that's like something that I haven't seen too many like people do who have written like either rock memoirs, anything like that. And I also saw that you were kind of like doing incentivized ways of donation too. Like, hey, you can like, you know, buy the book or like get like a sign, or like try to enter to win like signed versions of it, which I thought was pretty cool, because I saw you had like the Dangerous Number, you had Chris Kraba, Dashboard Confessional. And I was like, oh, okay, so we really just got everybody on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a cool, as hard as the process was, it's been very cool too, because like Chris Caraba, he gave me his cell phone number like in 2015 or 14 when I was out on the road with Have Mercy. We all like, they played the same music festival, and I told him about this charity that I run, Zero Platoon, and he gave me his cell phone number. And then whenever I called him or texted him, he never responded. But this time, somehow I texted him and he responded, and we set up like a Zoom, and we Zoomed, and I told him about the book, and he was so cool and very interested in it. And he actually gave me Hands Down from the So Impossible EP, because he owns that version. And so he let me use that version for free, so I wouldn't have to go to Universal Music, who would have charged me to use it. And then the Smoking Popes did the same thing. They gave me a version of Megan that they recorded for their drummer's YouTube channel. He has like a YouTube channel called Live at the Rock Room, where he does like live music performances with bands. And so they have a new recording from that, and he gave me that to use for free. And then the biggest thing is Jimmy Eat World. Like, their management was so cool through this whole process, trying to help me out. They put me in touch with Universal Music to get their songs. Then Universal Music wanted to charge me for their songs. And the thing was, the deal I had with all of the bands was that like, you can use these songs for free as long as nobody else is getting paid. So if someone else gets paid, then we have to get paid. And so I was down to the Jimmy Eat World songs, and Universal Music was going to charge me $125 for each Jimmy Eat World song, which is the stupidest bullshit, because you know that even if the band gets 50% of that, like split between 4 guys is nothing.
Yeah.
And they don't get 50% of that. So like, that's such a bullshit thing for Universal Music to do, even though I explained to them everything. And so Jimmy Eat World announced that they were doing their Phoenix Sessions shows on their like live streams. And so I knew they would be re-recording that music live. And so I asked if I could use those versions, and they let me use those Phoenix Session versions. And so I wouldn't have to pay Universal Music, because if I would have paid Universal Music, I would have had to pay everybody, and it would have cost me over like $10,000, which I don't have. And I have not made anything close to that from the book.
Right.
So yeah, like Jimmy Eat World was super cool about it too. I don't know. It's just been insane. Like Lisa Loeb let me use Stay, which is super exciting for me. It's
That's
like a
wild.
huge song.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And there's a Format song in there. Yeah. So I don't know. That was all really cool that I was able to pull that together. Some of the guys from Acceptance helped me get their song in it. Yeah. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because like this would not exist if not for the punk and emo community coming together, and letting it exist. So that's why I'm so proud of it. And I love that, like, that's like something I want to get across in the book, that like this community and this scene has like kept me alive. And then it literally happened. I watched it happen to make the audiobook come together. So I don't know. I'm very happy about all that.
It does feel like a lot of those artists would probably be like looking at like some artists like Bright Eyes and Bayside and that. It's like Alkaline Trio too. It's like these are bands where it's like you've probably gone through a lot of similar feelings and things, and like I'm sure that like there's a certain amount of I don't want to say altruism. I don't love that word, but it's like I want to give back to the community that saved me in the same way by giving them this book, and like the music that did that is so crucial to the end product of it. And I'm sure that most of the bands probably share that same feeling as well, as like, if I can do for somebody else what music has done for me, that's my entire goal here.
No, totally. And that is exactly how I see it, because I've had people tell me, thank me for writing this book because they were going through it, and now they don't feel so ashamed of it or feel so alone with it. And that's exactly how I felt about Bayside. And that's exactly how I felt about The Dangerous Summer, and Jimmy Eat World and Death Cab. Like, that's exactly what that's why I put the book out, is because I never expected to hear anybody tell me that, but I wanted people to feel that, and not feel like ashamed of going through stuff like this, or some of the more shameful parts of the book.
It feels like more. I mean, we've interviewed James from High Notes and talked about like the bands that are now being more vocal about their struggles with addiction, their struggles with that's mostly an addiction based podcast, but just having more artists be vocal and present and visible with those struggles. Thinking of like Burt McCracken from The Used is like how he's like sort of trying to reform himself, and like now when we saw him before the pandemic, we're like, damn, he looks good and he can still sing, and like he's like really come out of that whole place in his life. And it's like that I think helps so much more than like the media trying to be like, no, everything's fine, don't look at that, like it's fine, or in a kind of disgusting way, like people celebrating that like an artist is like down in their luck, and we're like watching them like a TV show, like holy shit, they're going through this, what are they going to do next?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I just went to see Bright Eyes here in New York a couple weeks ago, and on this tour, I don't know if you guys are fans or like are paying attention to any of this stuff coming out, but like I've seen so many people talk about how fucked up on stage he seems to be. And I'm like also part of like a Bright Eyes fan group on Facebook, so I've seen like pictures and stuff, and people are posting pictures of him on stage, and he just looks bad. Like he looks, you know, like addict bloated, like drunk bloated, and kind of just out of it. The Bright Eyes show I went to here, even though it was outdoor, they didn't check for vaccinations or negative tests. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is New York. And it wasn't like law to do that yet, which it's supposed to be in like September. But no one was wearing masks, and it was like 100% capacity. Like, I just didn't feel comfortable. So the whole time there, I was like barely paying attention to him. And I was standing in the back, and wearing 2 masks. And I was like, nobody else here is wearing a mask. What the fuck? And so, yeah, I didn't pay attention to what he looked like, 'cause I was too worried. But yeah, no. And so like people aren't celebrating it, and I'll see some people stick up for, like, not stick up, but some people come in with the like, yeah, but it's Bright Eyes, he's like tortured, blah blah blah, but people are disappointed by it. And so I don't know, I mean, I guess that's definitely a good thing that it's not celebrated anymore, because I mean, Tyler himself has been sober for in fact, when he started recording the audiobook, he had just started getting sober. And I felt bad about that because I was scared that it was going to like trigger him. So yeah, he's sober now, as far as I know, still. Because he's been open about his struggles with that stuff too. And yeah, no, I think it's great that, you know, people are doing that. And I don't know, maybe it's because we've seen so many like young people, you know, die from drugs just in the last couple of years, you know, like young artists and stuff. And so, I don't know. I feel like it's more dangerous now too. You know, you never know what shit is cut with, and I don't know what the kids are doing these days, but the rock stars are dying a lot earlier, I think, than when they take the wrong shit than they used to.
Yeah, I think there's just so many more instances where we've grown out of the whole, like, you have to be a tortured soul to produce good content or music or whatever that may be. And I think just especially, like, I know from my friends personally, they really were impacted when Mac Miller died. And I was never a big Mac Miller friend, but I had some friends who like really got their shit together from doing like really hard drugs from it, because they're like, I don't want to do, and that like was really crazy to me personally, because I was like, oh, okay, like I was really upset when Chester Bennington died, but I was like, whoa, well, like you were almost like reformatting your entire life by it. I think we've moved out of a like drugs are cool, like kids want, like only the cool kids do drugs. We've like moved over and migrate out of it. It's like, yeah, you can do it, but you're not going to be like bullied or looked down on as like a square or something if you don't be involved in that culture.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not a rock star. And so I don't know how easy it is to do drugs safely anymore. But I mean, like Lil Peep and Juice WRLD and like all these people have died from like fentanyl and like the wrong shit being mixed together. And you never know now, you know? So it's like, yeah, you just don't know. And so like, I don't know if it's safe to, you know, a couple years ago, I like before COVID, I wasn't above, you know, doing some coke at South by Southwest or something, but now you just never know like what's there and what's in it. So I don't know, but I've never been like a big like illicit drug user. So I don't know if that's like, if there are safe, maybe the real illicit drug users know how to do it smart and safely. I don't know. I was never that invested to figure it out.
Yeah. Lizzie and I are real squares and have only drank, so we're not.
Yeah, that's where I am
like,
too.
yeah, it sounds fun for you. You more for you, I guess. But yeah, it's just been our different journey on that path. Yeah, I don't know. I know like Maddie Healy from the 1975 has said like I had to quit doing drugs because every time I would go to get drugs from somebody, they'd be like, "Aren't you Maddie from the 1975?" And he'd be like, I need to, like, if you get big enough, like, I think it's either like somebody from your team has to go do it, or like all of a sudden you have to, like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of these people are surrounded by, they want to keep the train moving, so they keep shoveling the coal into the engine, and the coal tends to be the thing that's killing the person who's paying you everything.
That's so funny. I'm going to try to tell this story without naming names. Sure. But at a South by Southwest, a publicist friend of mine, which I have many because I'm a music journalist, who represented a notable big emo pop punk Warped Tour-y band, called me, maybe, because text wouldn't be smart, but I feel like it was a text. But because I'm from Texas and South by is in Austin, and I go to South by Southwest every year. Last year was going to be my 11th in a row, and then they canceled it because of COVID. But this publicist texted me because they had to get weed for their client. So you're saying, like, you get your team to do it, and this client who would head a Warped Tour, I'll say that, this publicist was texting me if I knew somebody who could, and I don't think I hooked them up. I don't know. I can't remember if I did or not, because I definitely, like, have a lot of comedian friends in Austin who I've hit up for friends for drugs before. But yeah, I don't think I provided that. And then when I interviewed that band, they sat at my table and at the press day, and then dumped a bunch of weed out on the table and rolled up a joint and said, "What's up, Mike? Let's smoke a joint, or let's smoke a J." And I was like, "No, that's okay. I can't. I like, if I smoke weed, I'm just," which I haven't done in I don't know how long, but I never really did because it just makes me useless. So that was never a drug for me. But yeah, I could not have kept doing my job if I had smoked weed with this musical hero of mine. But I still got to sit there with them and interview them. That was enough for me.
That's always like the big rock star thing where, like, I feel like a lot of people would ask us, like, "Oh, hey, have you ever had this, like, crazy experience?" And I'm like, very rarely. And I don't know what I would do in that situation if that did happen to me. Like, the first band I ever interviewed, I was an undergrad, and it was in their van at this small suburban show. And I was interviewing them. They're super nice. And one of the guys had a sinus infection, and deadass asked my friend and I, "Do you have cocaine to help my sinus infection?" And I said, "I am so sorry, but I do not." And I had no idea what else to do. So I don't know if any other situation nowadays, how I would react. Back then, I was just like, I don't know how I would react now, but.
Yeah, that's an odd way to put that.
Yeah.
You could get Sudafed at
I was like,
Walgreens.
Sudafed could be better.
You just need an ID for that. Like, I don't get that at all. I'm going to change it up a little bit here to get us out of the conversation we're having, but also because I am interested. I have never listened to The Dangerous Summer, and obviously you're a fan because they're featured in the book, and you're wearing a t-shirt. So it seems like you know a couple things. And the poster. Yeah.
Right there.
So I was on Spotify, and a random song came up, and it was called "Fuck Them All," and I was like, "Oh, I dig this song. Like, I really dig this song." And so now I've been asking people, like, okay, I feel like I'm gonna like The Dangerous Summer, especially, like, it feels like there's like a genre of like the emo pop punk that, like, the older you get, the more you identify with it, and like it's not for like younger kids or like younger experiences. It's more for like that growing up experience and that adult experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you want to throw out, like, how could you get somebody into The Dangerous Summer?
Well, here's where you're right and wrong about that, because you listen to their newer stuff, and AJ, and I talked to him about this when we talk about the book on Rock Bottom Book Club, about how like his early stuff, which are the songs I use in the book, are early Dangerous Summer songs from 2010 and like around 2010, 2011. And younger kids would probably like, those are the songs for them, you know, just like they were for me when I was younger. But AJ has grown up and he's become way more positive. He's like sees the world differently than he did back then. And so, and this is funny because another friend of mine discovered the Dangerous Summer through this book as well. And I love hearing that because they are my favorite band. He's my favorite songwriter. And I love hearing people discover bands from this book. Someone else told me they discovered Two Door Cinema Club from it. And I love that. Like, I'm so happy about that because that's why I became a music journalist in the first place. So you heard their newer stuff, which is also great. And I love because they've grown up and I've grown up and now those songs are more relatable to me. But someone younger could get into them by going to the beginning and listening to their early stuff. I felt the same way about Blink-182 until when they made the Untitled record. Like that's my favorite Blink record because when it came out, I had grown up and grown out of, like, I still listen to the old Blink stuff and love it, but I wanted something more, and the Untitled record gave me that. So that was the first time in my life that I realized, like, oh, I want bands to grow up with me, you know. And Bayside's done the same thing, and so these are why these bands have stuck with me for, you know, 20 years. I mean, Dangerous Summer, 12 years, but yeah, so like younger people could get into it by going back to the older stuff, and they'd probably feel like, you know, it more relatable. Although AJ is still a very like spirited, exciting, fun, like young dude. I mean, I think he's only like, I don't think he's even 30, because he started that band really young.
Wow.
And so yeah, he's got a lot of life experience that makes him seem more mature to me. But yeah, he is still, I mean, even the new records are still like fun and have like a young spirit to them. But yeah, I'd say start at the beginning also because those records are just great.
Okay. I've actually had this conversation quite a bit about like the growing with the bands too. So I'm just really like, I feel like there might be some different bands that are more, like you said, Bayside, which is one that I brought up too, and like Alkaline Trio, I think as well, Rise Against. Like these are bands that just like they grow up and they just keep making music, but they keep making the same music because they're not worried about appealing to necessarily like younger audiences. Like, and Lizzie's gonna hate me for this, but I'm like, so Fall Out Boy, right? They're like, we're gonna do Mania, we're gonna do all this like pop stuff, and then like, oh, we're gonna get like the new kids into it. But meanwhile, like the people that grew up with Fall Out Boy are like, we just wanted to hear you as you are now, as opposed to trying to be something for somebody that you're not. Like nobody wants to see like, nobody wants to hear you sing about tragedy, right? But it's like the idea that like you're growing up, it's like you have kids, like you've got families, you've got all this stuff, but you're still like I don't know. It's like, is it clicking? Are your fans going to stay with you? Are they going to still enjoy the new stuff? Or is like I don't know. It's very interesting where music and especially rock music is going now.
No, I know. And I was so disappointed by Blink-182's California, which I didn't want to be disappointed by it. I love Matt Skiba, and I was always more of a Tom Blink song fan, but still, like, I still love Mark and Travis, and I gave it a chance, but it felt like several steps backwards, and they were such like cookie cutter cliche like pop punk songs that felt so inauthentic.
Yes.
to like who they were as like 40-year-old men with children and wives. Like, it's like, what the fuck are you singing about? Like,
Yeah.
And so that was like, yeah, like that. I haven't really listened to newer Fall Out Boy. Like I loved or like the first like 3 records, but yeah, like the poppier stuff I didn't. It just and I'm sorry if this is offending you, but
No, go ahead and offend
it just
her.
felt like
I
it
want you to
lacked
offend her.
substance. You know, it felt like it wasn't even created to have substance.
Mhm.
And so that's I mean, just myself as like a former like lead singer and lyricist, and like that's always what I go to, like I look for. And so it just I just couldn't hop on with the newer stuff. But yeah, like Blink, I mean, that's such an important band to me, and it was super disappointing. And then Nine came out, and Nine I felt a little bit better about. But yeah, like I want a band to grow up, but I'm totally fine with a band changing as they grow up. But it's gotta feel like an authentic change, you know. And I did not feel that with Blink.
Yeah, there was
Lizzie, you can
definitely
defend
something.
yourself.
Oh my God. I mean, with Blink, I did not like the California record either. So I think we're all on that same page. I think the biggest thing is that at a certain point, you kind of like end up selling out more to try to keep relevant into it. And as much as I love Fall Out Boy, they became that stadium household name band. And then that's when they began to sell out more. I mean, Pete Wentz does try to put more of like his personal influence into it, but I definitely understand people's grievances with it. I'm not upset about it. I'm only jokingly upset about it to an extent. I get it. Like I get it 100%. Like I saw them at Hella Mega and somebody's wearing a Mania shirt and I said Mania supremacy. And my friends were like, don't be like this right now. I said, I'm 100% going to be this right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just indifferent really, because like, I wasn't such a like Fall Out Boy diehard to care what they did. In fact, when they broke up and Patrick Stump put that record out, I loved that Patrick Stump record. But yeah, so I mean, whatever. They're like, they should do what they want to do. They weren't like a huge band for me. I liked their earlier stuff, but I think I was starting to grow out of like there was a point where I took a pause from pop punk because like I got really into indie like dance stuff, like the Hives and Hot Heat. And like in the like 2004, 2005, I like that was when Fall Out Boy was coming out. Yeah. Do you know when Take This to Your Grave came out?
Is it 03?
02?
02 or 03?
Maybe.
So yeah, like I moved to LA 05 to 07, and that's when I remember listening to a lot of Fall Out Boy, but that's also when all this like dancey indie rock was coming into the scene, like really hitting mainstream. And so I got really into that and kind of stepped away. That's why I'm not like part of the whole My Chemical Romance world. Like I don't hate them. I'm indifferent to them because like when they blew up, I had like moved on into this like dancey indie rock world.
That seems to be the way to go. I'm only a few years younger than you, but I'm like, all right, that was my high school time, like my chem. And then as soon as I got to college, like I was real into Panic at the Disco because that was that time. And I'm like the weird kid that's dressing in Victorian clothes. That's not actually correct, but like I'm wearing like Panic at the Disco and eyeliner, stuff in college. And it's like, cool. This is when I'm training to be an adult. Right. And then like after college, I'm like, think about getting into this new dubstep thing that's been coming out. This is kind of how the emo journey goes. You're like, yeah, I did my time. I really like that band, but now I'm into this electronic music stuff, I guess.
I feel like if you're old enough, the emo journey starts with being a ska kid. Because I feel like all the ska kids became emo kids. And I was a ska kid at first.
Yeah. I was never a ska kid. So I must be just like, well, I'm very interested in all these like generations where it's like the nostalgia and how it changes for everybody. And I'm like, yeah, well, that was part of it that I missed because I was never a ska kid.
I think that's one of the benefits, one of the few benefits that, which I shouldn't say that because now as I've gotten older, I've come to love being from where I'm from. But growing up where I grew up in this small town, so cut off from like big cities with music scenes, I think it definitely helped me because there wasn't a punk crowd where you just had to listen to punk, and there wasn't like, you know, an emo crowd. There weren't enough people for there to be separations of like by genre. Like all the skaters listened to ska, listened to punk, you know, and then like a couple years down the road, like Saves the Day and Get Up Kids started creeping in. And so it's just like, we're all in this together because there's only 10 of us. And so we like would just introduce music to each other. And I think that helped me like get my, you know, eclectic taste. And I mean, even if you look at like the beginnings of Warped Tour, you know, it was like, I don't know, I mean, it was all over the place, you know, there were with like, I don't know, Limp Bizkit and, you know, punk, and, you know, those things would creep in there. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was just like, I don't know, anybody with like the attitude for it, you know?
Yeah, was into it. In your audiobook, you did mention very briefly that you were in a ska Christian rock band, and I usually don't see all that together in one.
It was huge in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was huge. Like, that's why my independent Christian ska band was able to tour the country 3 times, because like it got popular enough that, I mean, there were a lot of Christian ska bands, and there were, I mean, there was one really popular. So there were like 3 that were hugely popular, but one called Five Iron Frenzy, like put out songs on a Asian Man Records compilation, went out on the Ska Against Racism tour with all just like regular ska bands. And so that didn't happen a lot. But then like I'm going to Furnace Fest next month, which is like, have you guys seen the lineup for Furnace Fest?
Yes.
Crazy.
So many of those bands are from the Christian rock scene. And that's why like I'm actually meeting up with friends of mine that played in other Christian hardcore and Christian punk bands 20 years ago when I played in that Christian ska band, and we're all going together because we all came from this scene. And some of those bands at this festival, you know, are reuniting because of it. But yeah, there's a lot of like bands that came from the Christian scene there. I mean, Under Oath came from the Christian scene. And so, yeah, I think if ska hadn't I think ska kind of killed itself by being so goofy. But if it hadn't, I think some of those Christian ska bands might have like been like Under Oath and been able to like transcend that, you know, that label. Like MXPX. I mean, MXPX came from that.
Oh, yeah.
Anne Berlin came from that. There's a ton of bands that did. And, but I think ska just being kind of so goofy, it just didn't hold on. But I think some Christian bands would have been able to make it out.
Can only think of Pick It Up for Jesus. Sorry,
I
Lizzie.
did want to ask, like, kind of going back to the book a little bit, because I know we were talking about earlier how this book kind of shows like how it is to kind of get out of, you know, this very bad, depressed, and using substances to kind of cope with that depression and mindset. Something that kind of came up to me was, this was kind of like a message, I feel, for a lot of those kids who were like in their teens and they're like, I didn't have a plan for me being alive past whatever age it was. And that's become like a weird TikTok dark trending thing, like trend that people do. But I really kind of saw that message in a way come through, because I have some friends who were like that too. They're like, I'm just like raw dog in reality right now because I have no idea what's going on, because they didn't think that they were going to be around to be, you know, in their mid-20s at this point.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't like conscious of it because, like I mentioned in the book, like I say in the book, like contrary to the belief of those who know me, like I want to live. Like I always thought that I'm talented enough to achieve the dreams that I have. if I work at them. I've never like thought I'm talented enough to like achieve the dreams without busting my ass somehow. Which like I never like realized that. Like I'm very confident in my talent in certain things, but I'm not so confident that I'm like, yeah, it's gonna happen. I'm only confident enough to know that I'll get there if I bust my ass and never stop trying. So I guess that's good. So yeah, no, I've always wanted to keep going consciously. I've always, at least I think I've always like, that's another thing I've started to realize in the last year, the more I talk about the book, is that like in the book, I say I'm not suicidal, but I've come to realize that if you're abusing drugs and you're aware that like you could die from it and you don't care, then you're suicidal. Like that's being suicidal, even though whether or not you're trying to kill yourself. And so but back then I definitely wasn't like conscious of it. And so, yeah, no, I always wanted to keep going because I knew like just like right around the corner, I was going to succeed, you know? At least that's what I thought, but I don't know. This is the great thing about the great thing about mental illness is that you can not understand why you think things because your brain's fucking broken, you know?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. It's like, I can't explain to you how I was okay dying, but also really wanted to live to succeed with the talents I thought I had. It doesn't make any sense, but neither does depression or anxiety. Like you stop breathing, like you have panic attacks for no logical reason. Like none of it makes sense. So, but I feel like there was never a point in my life where I just wanted to die, you know? Because I always felt like I was going to do something great. And I still do. But it's so hard. It's so much work.
Yeah.
God.
I mean, it's big like imposter syndrome energy, but also at the very least you have the like will-how and acknowledgement that you can do ABCD if you just keep busting your ass for it, which is great. And that like you can also reinvent yourself and just keep going at it in your 30s, because that's another narrative that's been trying to be pushed so much more recently now, that your 20s are for you screwing up in a sense and figuring out what you need to do, or your 30s are where you just hit the ground running and you hope, you know, more hopefully hit your stride and do what you're, supposed to be doing in a sense.
Yeah. Now, I just told a friend of mine the other day on Facebook, he was the bass player in my second band, and he's still a good friend of mine. And he posted something on Facebook that was kind of like having a kind of quarter life crisis. But he's done some really cool stuff. I mean, he's a great chef and has, you know, lived in all over the country being a chef. But he was really like questioning things, and I in like saying he felt like he made mistakes going after that. And I told him that, like, I mean, he's probably at least I think he's probably 4 years younger than me. But I told him that it's like, they're only mistakes if you don't learn from them, you know? And I've done so many different things in my life, and I'll probably do a million more. And I don't feel at all even close to so old that I can't do 20 more things with my life, you know? I mean, I just had a kid. My wife and I had a kid 3 months ago. And like, I mean, it's amazing. Like I love being a father, and I love playing with this kid, and she's so cool and so cute. And like, I mean, we both wanted kids, but we weren't planning on it anytime soon, but we're both extremely happy it happened, because we don't know if we ever would have planned on it. But it's like, now I'm a dad, and like, I don't know, like I produce and direct commercials in New York City, and I grew up in a town of 25,000 people, with one high school, you know, like it's just crazy. Like I won that Emmy back there for as a digital producer, producing digital media content for a TV show. I didn't have the internet until I was like 16. And that was like the AOL CDs, you know?
Yep.
Like the internet didn't exist when I was a kid, and I won an Emmy for doing things on the internet. Like I couldn't even dream of doing that because it didn't exist yet when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't even know what's going to happen next. Like, who knows? Maybe the thing that makes me a millionaire is not even invented yet, you know? So like, it's crazy, but like, that's why you got to stay alive. That's why you can't kill yourself, because maybe the thing that's going to make you the happiest, and not that that would be being a millionaire, although that would help. Maybe the thing that will make you the most fulfilled doesn't even exist yet. It hasn't landed on your radar, you know, even if it does exist, because that's, I mean, I moved to LA in 2005 when I was 22 to be an actor. I didn't really want to be an actor, turned out. I started writing scripts there. And like, now I'm a writer, you know, like who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But like, that's why you stay alive. So you can see the cool things that are going to happen.
It's just one big surprise the entire time, and you have to just stick around to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even though I've been writing music journalism for 15 years and writing scripts, I never in my life wanted to write a book ever. And now that's like the most accomplished thing that I've done in the last 5 years, really. So yeah, I owe it. One of my biggest dreams is to be and I'd still love to do it, was to be a music supervisor for TV shows and movies and like pick the songs that go in TV shows. And I got an internship to work with that at Warner Music, but then I also got my internship at Comedy Central, and I chose to go to Comedy Central. But then I made this audiobook, and I just basically music supervised an audiobook and put music into that like I would a TV show.
Yeah.
You think 15 years ago I thought that like, oh, I could just do this myself on an audiobook? No, like it's like I know Chris Caraba's address. Like I got to go to his house. So he could autograph posters of my book and autograph copies of my book, like to raffle off. Like these are heroes, like ants. And then as soon as I left his house, I drove over to Anthony from Bayside's house for the same reason. It's like, this is insane to me. But like, I don't know. This is what I'm saying. It's like, I can't believe there was a point in my life where I was okay dying, you know? Like all these cool things have happened, and it's just because like I worked at making them happen. But yeah, I mean, I feel like if I can do it, coming from, you know, a poor kid in a shitty little town in South Texas, I feel like anybody can do it, because it just, I mean, anybody willing to bust your ass, because it was a lot of hard work. But.
Yeah.
Well, I love the positive note to kind of wrap it up on. We are a little over an hour, but I want to give you a chance to shout out where everybody can find you on the internet, where everybody can find the book, where the best place is for people to go get it. Obviously, the money is primarily going to donations, I believe you said. So
yeah,
wherever the best way is for you to do that.
Yeah, so I don't care about the charts anymore on Amazon. For the first like year, that was good to like rank on there because it helped with like press and, you know, people like the bands being part of it and stuff. So you can go buy it on Amazon. That's still cool for me. And the audiobook is only on Audible and Apple Books, so you can find it there. You can go to my website, abergerjoint.com, ABERGERJOINT. And you can buy the book there. I'll personalize it. I'll sign it. I'll send it to you. I got stickers there, posters. Yeah, there's a bunch of merch there you can get. But also, you should go to abergerjoint.com and sign up on my email list, because if you're going to Furnace Fest or not, I'm starting to do book events. So I'm going to do one in Nashville in September. And before COVID happened, AJ from The Dangerous Summer and I were planning on going out on a book tour together. And he was going to play some acoustic songs and I was going to read some of the book. But then we couldn't do that. So I'm working on doing some events with him. It's not confirmed yet, but very close to confirmed. Nashville in September, right before Furnace Fest. And then I'm doing something in Birmingham, Alabama during Furnace Fest, which I can't talk about completely, but there's a lot of great bands at Furnace Fest that come from the scene in this book. And I'm not saying they're going to be at my event because I don't have them confirmed yet, but look, this whole hour we've been talking about how much I bust my ass to make my dreams come true.
Yeah.
And
here we are.
And in the last couple of months, I've said a bunch of times, I'm not delusional. I'm just ambitious. Mm-hmm. So, like I had a friend of mine submit my book for a Grammy award in the spoken word category.
Oh, wow.
And like a lot of people would think like I'm crazy and delusional, but I also have a fucking Emmy. So don't
so
tell
they have
me
to
I'm
consider.
You gotta ask.
Yeah.
Same asking thing, like consider me.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, go to burgerjoint.com, sign up on the email list because that's how you'll find out everything. Or you can follow me, and you can follow me because the email list is the way to go. Instagram, Mikey Lee Rock and a Burger Joint. That's where I post everything. Because tired of just giving people shit for free. You gotta follow me. Like I can't go out of my way to get my information to you guys. It's so hard. There's so much, and yeah, it's hard enough to just post on 2 different Instagrams, man. Just help me out.
Yeah.
Follow them both.
Tell me about it.
Follow them both.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it. Instagram's the best. I post there a lot, and email.
Sick. All right. Well, we want everyone to go and do that. Again, it's primarily donation and giveaway based for when you purchase the book. So please go do that and listen to the audiobook, which is the way to listen to it, the correct way to hear it.
Really is. And I'll tell you this. Sorry, I forgot one thing because I just started doing this. I just ordered like 100 books, so I have like 100 books here at home. But it's because like a couple of bookstores are going to start carrying it, like little indies all over the country. But also, what I'm going to do on my website is if you order a paperback book on the website, I'm going to give you a link to get the audiobook for free. So you'll get both of them. So
you get
go to my website.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if I'll put it up there. I haven't put it up there yet, but I'm gonna do that very soon. I'll do it tomorrow. But anybody who buys the book after today, I'll do that for. So yeah. So go to my website and buy the book there because I am working on some cool things and I need money to make those cool things happen.
Absolutely.
And then the 50% of those sales go to mental health charities. So you'll be helping out with that too.
Love it. Go get it. 1 million books sold by
1 million books sold
by a week from now. Whenever
run the Audible app up.
Yeah,
with the
run
book.
that Audible up. Well, Mike, this was fantastic. This is such a cool conversation.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
I know we could have gone on for another hour, so I'm like, this is just like so much cool stuff, and really appreciate your time. No, it's honestly like so much easier to talk to somebody who like wants to talk. You know, sometimes it's like, oh, you have all these cool stories. You talk. Please tell me all these cool stories because these are awesome.
Well, this is perfect timing because I haven't done a podcast. I mean, I did one yesterday, but before that one, I hadn't done one for in months. So, yeah, I needed it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate having you on.
I miss talking to people in words that are other than like goo goo.
True. Well, yeah.
I won't annoy you with the actual noises I make with my daughter, but I realized the other day that for like half an hour I was just making a noise. Like my in-laws have been here helping us out, and they were like sitting on the couch, and my wife was over there. But for half an hour, I was just lost on my daughter making the most annoying noises to like entertain her, just because she would smile. And then I was like, oh, there are other adults here who are probably getting annoyed by this, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
She's
I mean,
got the cutest smile. So.
if the baby's in the room, like whatever it is, you have to do it. If that baby also came up to you and just was like, "You're a princess," you just accept
Yeah,
it. That's what it is. It's just the rules.
Yeah.
Just go
I
with
can't
it.
wait.
They are the
wait for it.
ruler. That's it.
I love it so
Yeah.
much. Well, Mike, thank you again so much. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Rock Bottom at the Renaissance is the book. Go get it. Go follow. And appreciate you for being on.
Thanks, guys.